Paul, you said some profound stuff, man. We should let the Shemiga from Philadelphia, who's a Crip.
I know it's blood. He's a bud. Piru Paul.
Right. Blood.
Piru Paul.
Don't put it on. You don't know what kind of trouble you're gonna get in.
Right.
I know you don't hang out in the hood of Philly.
Philly niggas is no joke, Paul. Don't fuck around with the
You're already
mad enough.
You're already trying to get me in trouble with Umar.
Real talk, Paul. I felt real. The other day, I was like, you know what? I gotta stop doing Umar shit around Paul because them niggas might fuck him up. And
it was weird. I mean, there was a rock came through the window the other day. I was like, that's weird. No, I'm playing. Angela, I'm playing.
I would feel so bad if one of Umar's people just fucking caught Paul out there in them streets.
Yeah, you would laugh a little bit though. You gotta admit, you would laugh like
it depends. It depends. If they just like talk some shit, I'd laugh.
Right.
If they, punch the shit out of you and you didn't see it coming, I'd be upset. I wouldn't be on the first thing smoking. I get to Philly eventually, but I would help you out.
I love this clip because Nixon sounds like Louis Farrakhan. It's wonderful.
To be shifting. Some aspects of black power are very disturbing to us because it means revolution. It means violence. But other aspects of black power are very constructive because it means that black people, they want to stand on their own feet. They want to have black banks and not just go to white banks. They want to have black businesses and not just go to the white businesses. And they should have, and they will have.
Now imagine James Brown, hearing that. Of course he thinks that this dude is the right man for the job. Sorry, I didn't want to play where I feel.
What James Brown doesn't know is that Richard is saying, of course we want these Negroes to go to black banks. You think we want them to go to Goldman Sachs and get into real capital and get real money? Let them scrap their Negro pennies together. Of course, yes.
Also, everything that he talked about is not a threat to capitalism. That's all I could think about. Is like, of course I support what they're talking about. He only lifted up two of the things that like the Black Power movement was actually discussing, like the capitalist issue. You wasn't talking about us owning the means of production for ourselves. You were not talking about, socializing housing, socializing the things that we were for. You didn't bring that up. You brought up they want their business, they want their banks, things that are not a direct threat to the capitalist system in this country. So of course
Paul said about Black Power, which is very, 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 very spot on, is that it meant many different things to many different Black people as well, not just to different the ruling class. Because what CORE and who was the brother who was president of CORE at the time? Oh my God,
McKissick?
No, not McKissick. It was the Caribbean brother. He died recently. The guy who beat up Al Sharpton.
Roy Innes.
Right.
Yeah,
what Roy Innes was talking about in terms of Black Power was not the same thing that Stokely Carmichael was talking about in terms of Black Power.
And I wish I had the exact correct thing, but one of the first Black Power conferences, it was I think in '67 in Newark, put together by Stokely Carmichael and Adam Clayton Powell Jr. I mean, you would be surprised to see some of the co-sponsors, including the New York Police Department and some other big, I think it was some sort of oil company. Again, I don't have the exact figures. I did write something about it. I'll have to go back and look. But again, when I saw that, and that, again, went back to like, well, I don't know if this is co-optation. This seemed like there was a lot of agenda aligned from the beginning. But I'm actually going to look that up right now. Yeah,
and I think a lot of this kind of ties into the disorganized nature of organizing against like what you don't want. And Stokely Carmichael even talked about this, is that like that's not unity, right? You need to have a unity of goals, or unity, like where are we going, in order to have true unity. And that's going back to Nixon and all these things like that, saying, hey, we don't like poor Black people around us, or we don't like poor Black people, is something that like a Black nationalist could hear that sentence and say like, well, yeah, we don't want poor Black people, or we don't want us around you either. And there's really no unity in where are we going. And at that point, the people in power get to decide where we're going, right? You just only decided, hey, that's what we don't like. And then in some cases, we could be getting things worse, you know, when you're talking about all the different sorts of bills and reforms and all the bullshit that comes along with just being in the United States. But no, at the end of the day, we have normalized a disorganized sense of unity that doesn't, you know, doesn't really direct us in any way. It just says we're leaving this one area, and it literally could mean, you know, everyone just walking in their own separate way.
I want to really touch on something Paul said earlier, which is a very good point, about how the ruling class was very willing to coalesce around Black Power. This is a good book you guys should read. I just gave the link. Top Down, The Ford Foundation, Black Power, and the Reinvention of Racial Liberalism, Politics and Culture in Modern America by Karen Ferguson. It's a great book, and it talks about how the American ruling class and its institutions were very happy to coalesce around the aspirations of Black Power, to basically engage in the concept that I talk about on the show all the time, to render Black politics into the politics of containment, in that it's a means of social control under a collective Black community in which its political aspirations can be negotiated through an elite tier and maintained in a contained fashion. Very
now, yeah, I got a question for the person here who has run outside of the, you know, elite political structure. Angela, I guess, yeah. Can you talk about maybe a little bit about what motivated you to run for like a part of the Green Party ticket, but also kind of the grander sense of things of like, I mean, where do you think the left can just gain some ground as far as the organizing effort, the unifying effort?
I think you just touched on it. What you just said about this the way that we move in this space of going from what we don't want and not being super specific about what it is we do want. You're absolutely right. And one of the things about the platform that I ran on is it's everything I want. And it's very specifically what I want. I want socialism. I want socialized housing for all. I want Medicare for all as a community-controlled national health service. I want the nationalization of our utilities. I want the internet to be publicly owned. I want an economic bill of rights for all people. I want a guaranteed income above poverty for all people that need it. So just talking about, you know, and it was really funny because when Howie called me about running, after I ran in 2016, I said I was never doing this shit again because it is exhausting. It is heartbreaking. It's beating your head against a wall because a lot of what we're talking about are things people know that they need. There's a lot of enthusiasm for these things. And the minute that you say socialism, people go, ah! Like that. So it's just like, it's like, but you want this, right? This is how we did it. And so, and just trying to be heard. And the thing I think that stood out with the 2020 election cycle was you had this really odious manifestation of everything that is wrong with this country down to its core that was literally sitting in the Oval Office. So we had that working against us. We had a plague and still do. We had an uprising and still do to a degree. And so you have those three things happening and people understanding that, something has got to change, but that thing that's sitting in the White House right now is so horribly bad that we got to get him out of there.
There's dang Cheeto in the White House.
Exactly. Mango Mussolini, as a lot of folks like to call him.
Mango. That's the first time I heard that shit.
I like
alliteration on that bitch.
My favorite description of him was mangled apricot hell beast. I thought that was fucking gold. But like, and it's exactly We got to find ways beyond electoralism, electoral politics. And I'm happy to tell anybody, I've always said it. It is a means to an end, but it is not an end in itself. It is a tool in a toolbox that if you have the ability to use it, if you want to use it, if it is available to you, then use that tool. But do not go cast your ballot and then stand back and say, oh, I did my part. That's it. No, because as you've seen, these people operate, elected officials in this country are operating like damn rock stars. Like you are above the law. Well, you know what I'm saying. Like you're above the law. You don't have to listen to us.
Yep.
The fact that you had all of this public outcry, you know, bipartisan, across classes for something as simple and low-hanging fruit as Medicare for all during a goddamn pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the power to make that happen. And you are looking people in the face and saying, yeah, we're not going to do that. If that didn't bring it home to folks that these folks aren't listening to you, that I don't know what.
And if I can, there's something I want to drive down on, especially when you mentioned like Medicare for all with localized control as a national healthcare service. Now, something's like you added on something that like I don't think the overall left, you know, really talks about when they, you know, even discussing Medicare for all as like a single payer healthcare system is also still just a band-aid. You know, a single payer healthcare system does not fix the closed down hospitals, that, you know, that does not fix the hospitals and healthcare centers that are just should be there that are not there.
Yeah.
You know, and so
especially in rural America, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and like, I mean, Paul, you probably tell us pretty good, right? Like, I mean, I know that Philly's gone through a few, especially maybe like 2 years ago. One of the major
Ottoman Hospital, right? It's closed down. Yep.
And I mean, that's one of many across the nation. New York City, you know, Cuomo has just been going gangbusters with tearing about that healthcare system. So there, yeah, I just, you know, wanted to recognize that as something that you said, that Medicare for all and talking about this is like single payer insurance. It's still bullshit. And if the most left in this country isn't talking about an actual healthcare service, a nationwide healthcare service, then we are doing, you know, a disservice on that. So,
well, to what Angela said, do you think it's a bit of like capitalist realism? Like we're so caught up in the rock star like nature of these political figures that once all that energy is put into a campaign to elect, you know, progressives, and then we kind of sit back and wait for the progressives to do all this work with no real organized left, no real relationship to workers' movements. And I know,
honestly, I think people did exactly what Angela said, and especially now it's like with AOC is like the most popular like target in the world, you know, and like not that I'm saying that she can't be critiqued. I am frustrated with the amount of energy that goes into critiquing her because there is not enough power in that one brown lady that's running the district of that's, you know, in fucking sophomore. Like there's just not enough power in that one body.
Yeah. And I think
it's just frustrating to see so much time wasted.
Go for it, Paul.
Yeah. And I think part of the problem overall with this, and there's a great article in Jacobin, it was written years ago by Seth Ackerman called Blueprint for a New Party. And I think part of the problem is like we actually don't have real political parties in like they do in other countries where you're actually a member of the party. You pay dues to it. You have some level of control over it. And the parties, you know, I think our understanding of electoral politics is so distorted here because we don't have our own labor or socialist party. And I think in these other countries that do, you don't have these kind of like, to me, there's sometimes a weird debate about like, well, either we shouldn't care about elections or we should totally. It's like for them, it's kind of this basic understanding that, of course, we need to engage in elections as an expression of our power in society. And it's easier to think that way when you have a party that can legitimately say we are a Labor Party, we're a Socialist Party, things like that. I think that there's a much more healthy understanding of like, the parties and the movement go together. And in fact, in the best cases, the labor parties or socialist parties are active agents of facilitating movements as they're running candidates. But in this country, we don't have that. And I think it really kind of distorts that kind of thing. And, like my father's from Barbados. They have two labor parties. Both their parties are labor party. And, so growing up, and a lot of people in my family were active in the party. And as union people, it was a very basic thing of like, the Labor Party, of course, we're going to engage in elections. Of course, we need our people. We need to have the majority in government at the same time as we're doing our work in our unions. It should flow together, but because we don't actually have real parties, you're not a member of the Democratic Party. You're not. Like, you don't pay dues. You don't have any control. It really distorts what we can do here.
And what's interesting that when you say that, Pascal and I talked to Brian Mayer of Brazil Wire, and I was in Brazil in 2019. And while I was there was a huge strike because the president, Bolsonaro, was trying to like either privatize pensions or kill pensions or raise the age when you could get your pension. I forgot exactly what he was doing, but pretty much large swaths of the country shut down to the point where airports shut down. They were burning tires in the freeway. So it wasn't like, you see these protests where motherfuckers shut the freeway down, take a bunch of selfies, they go about their business. Right. They shut down all public transportation in Sao Paulo, which is like the biggest city in the country.
And the Workers' Party in Brazil is a great, and they're not perfect. None of these parties, in fact, many labor parties in Europe are starting to sell out, but I'd still rather be in a position to have a labor party to sell out than nothing, or
to have a real left. And that's what he's talking about. He's like, and Brian's from the States. He's like, there's no real left in America like there is in places like Brazil.
And in Brazil, that was built up over time. I mean, they started out in a region, right? And I mean, kind of in the 80s, and they first were contending for these lower level seats, and they just built that shit up. I mean, literally over 30, 40 years to the point where they could lead a national government. But even when they were small, at least they had a party of their own.
Can I ask?
And take tens of millions of people out of poverty once Lula gets into office,
right.
And you could definitely critique Lula when he gets in office, and the political machine in Brazil is very different than what we have here. The way it's set up. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marcus.
Well, I was going to ask if anyone sees any real building, and like, I think DSA now is like one of the bigger, or at least most popular, just because of some of the elected officials that have been able to come in. But Socialist Alternative, PSL, there's a few other organizations that are growing, so do we see that as something that could be in our future, that hey, as long as we act in correct ways of solidarity to organizing, that we can get to there, to those functions? Or do y'all think that we're kind of like completely lost and we're starting from like ground zero?
I want to see where here. I was gonna let Angela talk. Trey, why don't you let the ladies eat first, Trey?
Oh damn,
y'all are so bad.
We are terrible to each other.
Y'all are so bad.
It's because we love each other, though.
Like I said, I am a stan of this podcast, so y'all already know. I know it's love. I think that it's possible. I think that one of the things that inhibits us here in this country with building a left that may not be something that inhibits people in other countries, and y'all please correct me if I'm not speaking correct, but we got a problem in this country of believing in what's possible. A whole lot of us don't believe that socialized medicine, something that the government is running so that it is something that everyone gets. We don't think that that's possible, even though Cuba has been doing this beautifully for decades, and they're not far from us, and have been very willing and very open about, sharing this with us. We in this country don't believe in what is possible.
To hear the rest of this show and more, you can find us at this is Revolution Podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Podbean, Pandora, and wherever else to get your podcasts. Also, you can find a new episode every Wednesday on the Zero Books YouTube channel. This is Revolution.